Today we're going to be analyzing the foundation decks that just got released from the alchemy of Tarkir Dragonstorm. There are 5 commanders that are in the shop, and in this video I'm going to explain why the pricing of them are excessively high, the contents of each of these 5 pre-con commanders, suggested upgraded versions for each of these decks, my tips and tricks that I have playing each of these commanders. Also, in the channel, I have gameplay with all 5 commanders, their upgraded list in their descriptions, and make sure to look at the timestamps if for each of the commanders you're interested in. So let's begin. So as a financial standpoint, what are you getting for each of these decks? First of all, assuming that you get a price line of 20,000 gems for each, the price for these gems are $100. So if you would buy at 20,000 gems, each of these decks will set you down $100. And what are you getting for those $100? So I made a couple notes. For the first deck, for Neriv, you're getting 6 mythics, 27 rares, 36 uncommons, 12 uncommons. For Betor, you're getting 7 mythics, 28 rares, 34 uncommons, and 12 commons. For Eshki, it gets 6 mythics, 27 rares, 30 uncommons, and 18 commons. For Elsha, you're getting 6 mythics, 28 rares, 27 uncommons, and 20 commons. And finally, for Kotis, you are getting 6 mythics, 29 rares, 32 uncommons, and 15 uncommons. So here's my issue with the price line with each of these decks. In essence, the decks are okay for their price line, but pretty much what you're getting for how much you have to pay is completely disproportionate. You're paying $100, and out of the approximate 27 to 28 rares you're getting per deck, you're losing a significant amount of value by using other methods that are in the game. For example, buying packs, which is the direct comparison. Out of those 27 rares, only 4 or 7 of them are mediocre at best or very replaceable. So realistically, you're having 20 to 21 rares that you're paying for. And the majority of those rares are lands. And out of those lands, 2 or 3 are an average 2 or 3 of those rare lands are not even good. They're tap rare lands. They don't have any benefit. They're completely replaceable. So that means you are getting 18 to 20 realistically good cards per $100 you're putting per deck. On top of that, of the rare lands, you are missing 12 of the best rare lands you want to craft on any 3-color deck. It's missing all the fetch lands, which are the lands that you pay 1, you search for a card as with a type. For example, for Neriv, you can search for a black or a red, any mountain, any swamp, and you can fetch for multicolor cards. You're missing all that set of lands, which are 10 in total for all colors, and 3-color decks use 9, and you're missing 3 shock lands per deck. So in total of 10 are the whole set. Each 3-color deck uses 3 shock lands. So per deck, even if you spend the $100, you're going behind 12 of the most important lands you need per deck. Also, for the amount of value you're paying, it is converting. Let's go with the bundle here. It's pretty much doing the conversion. Where did I miss it? That's here. It's using this exact conversion, which tends to be the worst one, where you're getting 4 rare wild cards is $9 and 4 mythics is $20. So it's doing a conversion for $100. You would be paying for 21 rares, which is 70, and 6 mythics for $30. It tries to do that with the decks. But the problem is this is the worst way to spend money in the game. You're going to have significantly more value if you just bought 100 packs. By just buying 100 packs, you're getting around 20 rares and 9 mythics. And that's not including any of the pulls you get for the packs, and not a single of the pulls you're gonna get for having a golden pack. So every 10 packs you get a golden pack. So the amount of potential cards you're losing is significant, could almost be double. You could get double the rares, double the mythics by just getting packs. And that is just the largest disadvantage, is they are extremely expensive for the amount of price they're asking for. I think Wizards needs to increase the quality to make these decks better. One of the easiest fix is add those, example for any of these 3 color decks, add the 12 rare lands that each deck is missing. That is a big increase. And of these 2 or 3 bad rares you're getting per deck, just remove them and actually give you high quality cards. If they added 6, 8 extra rares plus the 12 rare lands, getting approximately 20 actually increased rares, then the price becomes a bit better, especially once you have the discount. If you have the cards in your collection, the cost is going to be significantly more worthwhile. Now let's analyze each of these precons. What are their contents? So for the first precon, Neriv Crackling Vanguard, it has some good rares in the lands. Pretty much its best quality are the lands of each of these precons, but you're still missing a significant amount. Just here we have 8 common and uncommon lands, and you're paying $100 for all these cards. And still, out of these 16 would be basics, you would probably just are looking to go for a 3-color deck between 3 to maybe 6 on basics. So you are missing around 18 to 20 rares, or just good quality cards you need in the deck. For example, you don't have, say we go for lands, and we search for pay 1. You are missing all these fetch lands, the whole set. So in the set there are 10, and none of the 3-color decks have them. You're also missing the shock lands, which are use 3. Each 3-color deck uses 3 shock lands, and the set has 10. So per deck you're losing 3 of these lands. That means in total 12 lands you do not have in this deck. Not assuming the other utility lands that could help the deck, but every 3-color decks must run these lands to function properly. These are the best lands, and it is the complete shame that you're paying so much money for a deck and you don't have access to the best lands. Now going for the creature, at least quality in rares and mythics on the creature category, there are an average decent cards. For example, Bitter Blossom being in a mythic, it is a good card to have in a deck like this, but there are some very questionable cards that I'm not really a fan of. For example, the Butcher of the Horde, I'd much rather spin a rare on another card. You have the Siege Commander, it makes sense with a deck like this, but it costs 5. Are you playing your commander, or are you playing this creature? You'd much rather play your commander. And there's some absolute staples that there are not in this deck. We're going to be showing that in the upgraded version, where I think are absolute must-have in these type of deck. Fortunately, you do have access to Zurgo, the other mythic which you may want to play with and have synergy with this commander. So in the creature quality, there's only 4 to 6 rares and mythics in this deck. So the change from this version to an upgrade version it would still be significant because you're wanting to probably invest into 10 to maybe 15 more rares or mythics in the creature, in the just your 99 outside your spells. So it'd be your 60 cards you're going to be playing with the deck. So you do the math, if you're missing just going for the core 12 rare lands you need, and if you want to upgrade your deck, you need between 12 to maybe 16 rares, mythics you want to include. Just rares alone, you're looking at 28, 29 cards you need to invest, even after investing the $100. So it's just too expensive for what you need to do. If I was gonna have to pay $100 for a deck like this, I would add. They would need to add the 12 lands that this deck needs, and I'll probably add between 3, 4, maybe even 8 rares on top of the rares they have, and good quality rares, not mediocre rares, because the price line is just so high. So let's see, how would an upgraded version of this deck look like? What would an upgraded version look for Neriv Crackling Vanguard? Just looking at the lands alone, this deck only has 3 basics. Pretty much to paint a picture of how many lands you need to invest into the precon to this version. It runs all 9 of the fetch lands. Other good lands to have in 3-color decks is Prismatic Vista, which is a mythic. You have the 3 shock lands. Other good utility is Cavern of Souls. Every creature deck wants Cavern of Souls to protect yourself from counter magic. Decked in black and red likes Mountain Doom. Ways to tap. Phyrexian Tower is pretty good in a token deck because you can sacrifice a token to get more mana. And Arena of Glory is also pretty nice to give your card haste. Plus, the channel lands of Viganjo, especially in these colors, is very useful. Those are some of the just must-have cards. There's some other utility lands like Fountain Port, Merex, but they're definitely optional. Other good lands to have that are legal and standard are the Verge lands. These lands that tap for a color, and if you complete the condition, for in this case for the Sunbillow Verge, if you have a mountain and plains, you can tap for the other color. This is the most important part of any 3-color deck, the lands, because you want to consistently hit each color to be able to play the cards you need. The worst thing you want to do is have a great hand of great removal and creatures and always have a tap land. Never be able to play the card each single turn. You don't want that. That is the biggest and most important upgrade to do, especially in a 3-color deck. Once that's done, other good cards, but I would say staples in Mardu would be Lightning Bolt. It's just very cheap, has removal, reanimate to bring back your commanders. Pretty much the best way to get back for very cheap 4 greater cost creature. Other good Swords of Plowshare is pretty good. Legion Landing is pretty nice in this deck as you can go wide. Those are, I would say, the big ones. Dismember is a mythic, but it's very good for its cost. It's a 1 and 2 Phyrexian mana, so you can play double black or just pay for life. So it only costs 1, and you have removal. All these are very good upgrades. But I would say the absolute 2 best cards in this deck would be Mondrak and Elspeth. And Elspeth, those are the best for a token deck because it's a token doubler. You make double the token, you already make a bunch of tokens with your cards, so doubling them can just single-handedly win the game. So these 2 are absolute all-stars. I also really like Perforos, God of the Forge, because when you make tokens, you do more damage. So just making 2-3 tokens, you're doing 6 damage to your opponent, and it's very difficult to interact with because it has indestructible, giving you another alternative win condition. Of the new cards, I really like All Out Assault in a token deck because you can give them Death Touch. So even though they're small, the opponent doesn't want to block them, because Death Touch is any amount of damage a source with Death Touch deal to a creature is enough to destroy it. So even a 1/1, or in this case a 2/2, would take out any power and toughness creature if they want to block it, unless they have Indestructible. For the 3-cost side, I really like the pretty much high value creatures that make more tokens, because they make tokens each turn. So Pakal is quite nice. Legion Warboss. Lagomos is pretty good. It was in the pre-con. As a finisher, Imadane is quite nice. We have House Squad Heavy. Fable was in the pre-con, so it's still good. Ophiomancer makes tokens, and Lord Skitter also makes tokens. Also Adeline makes as well. These are just token makers. Each turn you want to make tokens. Toby's a good finisher, because once you have enough, which is 4 or more, all your tokens gain flying. So for the creature side, outside the Mondrak, Elspeth, and Perforos, and the creatures, you can get away with the other cards. I really like the staples on the 1-cost category, but they're not that much. The big investment are the lands. Alright, let's go for the next one. The second deck, we have Betor Ancestor's Voice. So for this version, in the pre-con, we're analyzing the pre-con version first. It has, again, we have 6, 8, this is now has 10 lands that are commons and uncommons. And it has 15 basics. So we're into the same issue that it requires between 18 to 20 rares to at least invest into the land department. So that needs an immediate upgrade. But with the 60 cards that are in the deck, let's see what rares and mythics this pre-con version has. It has Dune Blast. It's pretty expensive for its effect. You do have the Pioneer Master's Dragon, Dragon Lord Dromoka. It's okay, but it's a little bit expensive for its effect. It has the Strixhaven, Orzhov Dragon, Shadrix, Sliverquill, which is fine, but I wouldn't say it's a must-craft. It's an okay mythic to have. It has Felithar. It's an uncraftable mythic, so you would get that value from there. Siege Rhino. And the rest in the deck pretty much has an identity crisis where it wants to... pretty much is almost brewed like it was a Felithar deck with a lot of high toughness creatures. But the deck really wants you to gain life, so you get more counters on the creature and methods to lose life so that you can revive creatures. One of the best ways to lose life is through the lands, because there are lands that make you lose life or do an effect. Saga Completion is okay. It's another way you can, cheap way to lose life if you need to revive something. But I'm not really a fan of this pre-con. Not only if for the upgraded version would have a land problem, but you also, the majority of this list pretty much has to be changed up. So let's see how an upgraded version of Betor looks. So for the upgraded version of Betor, the best method to lose life in the deck to have its effect to revive a creature has been through the lands. The Modern Horizon lands have an effect, or if you play them untapped, you have to pay 3 life. I like to, if I have these in my hand, I like to wait until I have mana to play my commander, and just by paying that 3 life, I'm able to revive a creature with mana 3 or less, because it cares for the mana. So these are the best ways to pretty much revive a creature for a low cost. Urborg is another just good land to have in every single deck that has black, because it makes every land tap for black if it needs to. We also have the shock lands. They pay 2, so they can revive. Just this land alone can revive a creature with 2 or less mana. And now if you combine them with the fetch lands, you're paying 1 to fetch, you're paying 2 for the shock land if you want untapped mana, so that's 3 life. You get to revive a creature with 3 or less mana. Now, from the 60 cards, other good cards in this deck I really like. For example, it's an uncommon, Ulcerate. It's a -3/-3, and I lose life. It's just a very good card for just 1 mana, and it synergizes with our commander. Also, Dismember, you lose life, but it's very efficient. And because we have cards that care for gaining life, Solitude, if we wanted to play on the creature form for 5 mana, it's a removal and a blocker. Virtue Persistence is also removal and we gain life. And what are our payouts to gain life? We have Amalia gains life. Golden Sidekick can make our creatures gain more life. Trilasara also gains counters when you gain life. You also have a Johnny's Primate. Pretty much many cards that have this type of effect. When you gain life, you put a counter. So we're constantly gaining life, we're getting counters, and later when we have our commander, we can give counters to every creature. Because we have also sources to gain life. For example, the Hinterland Sanctifier that gains life for when another creature you control enters. Other ways to give all your creatures lifelink is Whip of Erebos. Another really good I'd include a deck like this. Give everything lifelink. Punch. You can activate these effects. The Ajani's Primate effect, Betor's effect, and other ways to pay life. One of the best ones is Necropotence. Necropotence, you lose life. You can't draw. You skip your draw step, but you can pay any amount of life and you draw those many cards. But when you discard a card, it goes to exile. One of the advantages of this deck is if we want to revive with our commander, as long as we don't discard it, we can still gain its effect. Necrodominance, which is another similar enchantment with a similar effect, has the problem when a creature dies, it goes to exile. So we lose that mode with our commander. But Necropotence is just if you discarded a card. And this is pretty good with a deck like this because we gain a lot of life and we can use that life as a resource. Other high value cards, of course you have Shieldred. Shieldred is very good, especially if you can get her back multiple times. Now it loses life for the opponent, but we gain life. Gex is also pretty good because we can use that life to draw cards. Black Mat Connection are just staples in black. And one of the better cards I really liked was Adonto Vanguard. For just an uncommon, we can even activate the pay 4 to just revive a creature if you have our commander out. So we have an on-demand, almost revive mechanism as long as the commander is on the board. Let's see what the next precon looks like. Let's analyze Elsha 3/4 Master Precon from the shop. One of the big takeaways I'm seeing with this precon in the land section is it's missing the Triumph. Every other precon we have reviewed prior has had at least the Triumph. This deck is now missing it, which is a big issue, especially with Elsha. Elsha is 3 mana, needs all 3 colors in blue, red, and white. So normally one of the best lands to get is the Triumph. Instead it has the uncommon, which you cannot search with your fetch lands. Of course, it's missing the 9 fetch lands, 3 shock lands, so you're missing 12 cards. You have 15 basics. Normally a deck like this runs 3, maybe 4, not that many basics. So in total, you're missing between 20 or higher. This deck tends to have the poorest land quality. It has 10 in commons and uncommons with the 15, so that means 12, 22. Missing 22 lands you do not have and you need to upgrade, so it's very prohibitive in the land count, and that's tend to be as we're going to see with the upgrade version, that is the most expensive part of the deck. So upgrading it would be very expensive. As for this version, it's just all over the place. It has very expensive cards. There's this alchemy card. It's just nice, but this deck really doesn't want to work with Elsha. It's just super expensive. I think on its own is better. As this is better as a commander if you want to play it as a commander. In the 99, it's just very rare you're gonna get a card like this. You need it to have in your hand to maybe play around it. Otherwise, who knows when you draw this card. one of the issues in Jeskai, which is blue, red, and white, is not very good at searching creatures. It's very good at searching instants and sorceries. So trying to find this card becomes very difficult. You have Magma Opus. Its effect is not that important, but it is a mythic that you can discard to create a treasure. That's the most important part of this spell. It is good for that effect, but there is another card that's an uncommon that does the same effect, so you don't really need the mythic. And one of the advantages, you do get the other commander, which is Shiko and Narset Unified. I think this is a much better Shiko and Narset deck than an Elsha deck. So you can replace it and treat it as a Shiko deck instead. I believe that would be the better option, especially with a list like this. That it looks like it can apply the Flurry, which is the effect to cast your second spell. It copies it. That's Shiko Narset's effect. And one of the big cards that's missing, you don't have Lightning Bolt. It's very lacking on the counter spells, doesn't have the good counter spells. It has Jeskai Ascendancy, which is a pretty good card. Prismatic Command is one of the better cards in the deck like this. But it feels very low on high quality rares and mythics. It has some questionable ones. It doesn't have that much quality in this 60 card portion of the deck, and pretty much the biggest loss were the lands. So let's see how an upgraded version of this deck looks like. For the upgraded version of Elsha Threefold Master, one of the advantages of the upgrade is the amount of rare mythics you need to upgrade at least the 60 card version, excluding the lands. So you still need to invest into the lands. It's the most expensive part of any 3-color deck, so you have to add all the 9 fast lands and the 3 shock lands are in the deck, because this deck only has 5 basics. Once you have that investment, you only really need 4 mythics and 6 rares to make a pretty good deck with Elsha. And that's the advantage of this specific deck, is it's pretty cheap to upgrade if you have the lands. Because the majority of your spells are protection spells, draw, some sort of evasion for your commander, and counter magic. And the most expensive counter magic spells, there's only 2, which is counter spell and mana drain. Those are the most expensive counter spells. It doesn't run that many creatures, so it really makes for this type of deck pretty cheap. As for the essence of what is the best version, or the version I've liked the most playing with Elsha, has been to play a method to ramp, have 4 mana, 1 mana to protect my commander. My commander costs 3. Have easy ways to hit all 3 colors, protect my commander, next turn give it any sort of evasion, either flying or unblockable. And I would also like to protect it, so we have many ways to protect. Make her large, for example, Relic's Roar. She gets a 4/3, but with the prowess is a 5/4. Hits, and it keeps its other effects, so we're able to make quite a few monk creatures. And later on our consecutive turns, we play 1 spell or 2 and we can just threaten lethal. That's a pretty effective deck. Of the creatures, I really like Geista Draft. We have many ways to protect, many ways to give evasion, so it's pretty much almost like our secondary commander. Especially we think our opponent has Wash Away, which pretty much counters cards on exile, which are going to be our commanders. We can play Geist instead, and it's an alternative win con. Sleep Curse Fairy is also pretty good because it's very difficult to interact early, and it's pretty cheap. So in the first turns, we can just play a card like this. And from Pioneer Masters, Chain to the Rocks is just good in any deck that is in white and red. So this is the upgrade version of Elsha. So let's go to the next deck. For the next deck, which is Eshki's Temur's Roar. See how this pre-con version is working. In the land department, it has out of the precons, the first rare that is pretty much forgettable, you don't even need to craft it, which is Shelterland Thicket. It enters tapped. Yes, you can search for it, but you have Commercial District, even in the same list where it's Surveil. So even in this deck, you wouldn't even search for that land. So that's pretty bad. You also have you have 8 lands, which are commons on uncommons. But one of the advantages in Temur, which is green, blue, and a red, you run more basics than your other 3-color decks because you have quite a few cards like Cultivate that searches for basics. So here you have 16 basics, and you normally run between 9 to 12. So you don't need that much investment in rares, but still it is a significant loss in the land department. One of the advantages of this pre-conversion is, at least in creature quality and rares, you have very good cards with Miriam, Ureni. The Ureni you cannot craft, so there's some good inclusions. Earthquake Dragon is good in a dragon deck, but it tends to be a bit prohibitive due to its cost. You also have other interesting dragons like Dragonhawk, Glorybringer are good dragons, Wrathful Red Dragon, but you have some other questionable ones. One of the disadvantages in Temur is on the creature quality. You're going to need probably the highest investment out of all 5 decks is going to come into Eshki if you want to play a dragon-based deck. Pretty much this deck looks like it's more of a Ureni deck than an Eshki deck. Later on we're going to show what would an Eshki deck look like, an upgrade version of an Eshki deck. But as a dragon deck, this is what this deck really is more trying to aim at. It is really lacking on the dragons. There's all the dragons, and the best dragons in this color combination are all rare or mythic. So it has the highest investment to upgrade if you want to go a full Temur dragon deck. It also is missing the counter spells, which they're not that expensive. You only need, there's the rare, which is Counterspell, and Mana Drain, which is a mythic. The others are commons and uncommons. That's a bit better. It also doesn't have the ramp. You want turn 1 ramp and turn 2. It has some ramp pieces, but it needs better cards for that upgrade. It does run a card like Kiora. Kiora is pretty good, but it really needs a significant investment, and it doesn't do any favors that now you have to invest 12 to 15 rares just in your lands, and then probably 20 or more for your deck. So let's see how an Eshki upgrade deck looks like. For the upgrade Eshki Temur's Roar deck, in the land department we have the fetch lands. We have Prismatic Vista, the Triumph, which the pre-conversion did not have, and the Shocklands. Those are the immediate inclusions to the 3-color deck. One of the advantages, especially in Izzet, is you have Fiery Islet. You have to pay 1, but you get the effect. These are pretty nice lands. The Prismatic Vista are pretty good lands. As for the creature version and how I would build a deck with Eshki, the big takeaway is you need to complete certain conditions to make a deck like this work. First of all, you need to protect your commander. It's pretty frail. Almost anything can remove it, so we need multiple ways to protect this commander. And there are 2 thresholds we need to meet. Creatures that have power 4 or greater, and creatures that have power 6 or greater. Ideally that they're cheap, but hopefully there's some cheap ones, but their conditions for them to attack or block are very difficult to complete. So we need just very good, efficient, and cheap creatures we want to have in this deck. One is Topiary Stomper. It just gets you land, which you want a deck like this, and has 4 power. All of these creatures have at least 4 power, unless they tap for mana, which are going to be like Delighted Halfling. Pretty good in every green deck. It makes your commander uncounterable. Other pretty good mid-sized creatures is the Agnosaur Rex just for 5 mana and 8/8, which is very good stats for a 5-drop, and completes the condition. Other new card from Alchemy is Stormforge Armor, which makes a ball of lightning when the equipped creature attacks, and you have to pay 3 life. The ball of lightning has 6 attack with 6 power. With 6 power, not only does Eshki draw, but you also do damage equal to her power. So each turn it's doing quite a bit of damage. And you have some good payoffs because you have high powered creatures. Cards like Skull Spore Nexus, the Ultimus, Great Hinge, and Galta, all these cards get discounted because you have high powered creatures. So you get to get them for cheap, and because they're normally really large creatures, you get to have second effect for Eshki. And as for the lower end, just cards that give her any sort of evasion, a bit of counter magic just to protect. Warcrate Marauder is a pretty good inclusion for a deck like this because you get to turn their blocker into a small creature. Thos is also pretty nice because you can give Eshki unblockable, and when she becomes creature version, she's a pretty good blocker. And that would be pretty much this type of deck. Pretty much don't neglect your protection for Eshki and your ramp. You have early game ramp, and we get to play the creatures, play Eshki, and go for the win. So let's go to the next deck. So for those curious that wanted to make an Ureni deck, we have another Ureni, which is the Song Unending, but the 7 mana one works well. If you want to go more dragon-oriented approach, here in this list we have 7 basics, so we can search for them. But I was not kidding that you need a significant amount of wildcard investment because all the good dragons are rares or mythics. So here we have 9, around 12 to 13 just dragons or enablers for dragons that are rares or mythics. So you need a significant investment to make a dragon deck work, plus other just high quality cards in Temur. There's Uro, there's the Alchemy card Capravedi Revels that can seek a card. You have the Overlords, you have a Tally, and from the Tarkir set, Dragonback Assault to make dragons when you play lands, which this deck does pretty well. River's Rebuke and the Primeval Titan are just pretty good cards. And in your early game, just play your ramp, which you need for the first turns. Lightning Bolt is just very efficient. Brainstorm to draw cards that can give you advantage, stock up. You also have Dragonologist that can search for dragons, which is pretty good, and some counter magic to protect your creatures. So it's a very high investment to make a deck like this works, but Temur is by far the best color combination if you want to play a true dragon deck where you play multiple dragons and threaten your opponents that way. Plus you have other high value cards. One of the advantages in this color combination is you don't really rely too much on your commander. Just your deck alone, just playing multiple dragons can net you a win. But of all the 5 decks, this is by far the most expensive to invest into. So let's go for the next deck. Let's look at the Kotis Sibsig Champion Precon deck. So in this version of the Precon, it's still missing the same amount of lands that all 3 color decks are missing. It doesn't have the fetch lands, and it doesn't have the shock lands, which are the most important ones. Also, we're missing just extra lands to include. It has way too many basics at 16. So you want on average between maybe 6 to 9 lands. We're missing 7 extra lands plus the ones here to replace. There needs a bit improvement on that department. So let's see about the 60 card portion of this deck. It does have a CDC, which is pretty good. It has the other uncraftable Mythic, Taval, the Balance Scales. Other good card, you see Dragonlord, Silmagar from Pioneer Masters that lets you steal the card. There's also Tassiger that can also be a commander on its own. There's some expensive card like Lord of the Forsaken. It's a little too expensive for his effect. There's Casualties of War, which is pretty good. Putrefy is not bad. But unfortunately, it's missing a lot on the staples, especially on the lower mana cost. We see no elves for the early game, no Delighted Halfling, missing a crucial counter magic, there's no Reanimate, and most importantly, missing the better mill engines, your artifacts or enchantments that mill you every turn. This deck doesn't have, so you have to craft. And they are rares or mythics, so it's an investment on that portion. But probably of the creature side is one of the better ones. It has pretty good rare quality. Breach of Multiverse is good. So of the few rares and mythics, very few I would say are truly bad. As for that department's good. But unfortunately, just the lands and its Sultai is notorious for requiring quite a bit of rares and mythics to function properly. So let's see how an upgraded version of Kotis works. For the upgraded version for Kotis Sibsig Champion, we solved the land issue, added the Triome, added the fast land, the shock lands, and the pain lands with only 7 basics. And we need to fulfill with this deck, one of the big challenges is to fill our graveyard. So what are the best ways to fill our graveyard? There is Mesmeric Orb. For very cheap, we get to fill our graveyard. And in the 3-minute category, we got Cemetery Tampering is another very good way to fill our graveyard. Just we play this card and it naturally mills for us. The Throne of Death, pretty much the artifact side of this card of Egon, God of Death, also mills us 1 for each turn. And what are our payouts other than our commander? I included cards that lets us play lands from our graveyard so we can consistently hit our land drops and get some benefit out of those lands that go to the graveyard. And for cards I really like to go what I wanted to revive, I went more for a mill strategy early game. We stabilize with our interaction and we play large creatures. Here I wanted to emphasize the creatures. These creatures, I like them to have an effect when they enter. Either fight, remove a permanent, make another creature, and in this case for the River Regent, we return cards to their hand. Kogla fights. We have Bony Paw, Clear Cutter that makes another creature. Cityscape Leveler makes another creature. So we're consistently hitting our lands, getting to that late game, and from our graveyard casting these creatures. We can also cast them from our hand. Other good cards are Rona or Jace. Especially if we're going for an interaction game plan, it's very easy for us to transform Jace and then do the -3 and play another cheap spell and use that removal. Other cool cards are Urtai because it gives us counterspell or removal. But be very careful with Kotis. Kotis has the text once during each of your turns. You can only cast one thing from your graveyard and it has to be during your turn. So even if you have your commander in play and it's your opponent's turn, you cannot play a creature with flash. So it's one of the big mistakes I was doing with a deck like this is counter spells, you want to have it in your turn or this card being in your hand. If you're playing for the graveyard, you're looking for more the removal portion. Also, Remnant Chupacabra is pretty good here. And of course, your typical counter spells if you're in blue, early game ramp because we're in green, and cards like Reanimate, for example, if the opponent board wipes us, we get to bring back the biggest threat. Thank you for staying till the end of the video. And of the largest takeaways of analyzing each of these 5 decks and their upgraded versions, first of all, their cost is too excessive for paying $100 for these decks. It's just not worth it. You are missing so many lands, and the cards in the 60 portion of your deck are just too require also a significant amount of investment Of card quality, probably the better one has been Kotis. Kotis is quite nice, but every deck needs a big upgrade in wild cards. I much rather recommend, if you are gonna spend money, just buy packs. Packs give you significantly more value. They give you around the same amount of wild cards you would get even if you spent all of them in lands, plus all the rares and mythics you're gonna be getting through each of these, all the 100 packs and the 10 golden packs you would get. Not to mention, if you draft, you can min-max to even get more value. So they're just better options than investing into these decks. As all 5, sorry, I would recommend the cheapest one if you get the lands is Elsha. Elsha is very cheap to just invest, requires the least amount of rares and mythics to upgrade. I also really like Neriv in general. Outside of not necessarily getting the deck, is just as a commander, there are a lot of options. That both Zergos are very good in Mardu, so you have quite a bit of options. Eshki works pretty well as a Temur deck, but if you want to play a true dragon deck, you have Miriam, or the Urenis work pretty well, are in that version. And Betor is more of a life gain deck that can reanimate those creatures, so it's very good value. Very fun deck to play if you like that sort of strategy. Probably the one commander I would strongly avoid would be Kotis after playing it. Not because the commander is bad, it's because it's in a very high queue. I guess my suspicion is Wizards got pretty scared for this commander, and they put it pretty much on the highest queue they could give a new commander, making it just have really difficult competition. So especially if you're new and you want to craft a deck, Kotis would require pretty much to all in into just that deck. So many rares, so many mythics, because your competition is absolutely ruthless. And still, my win rate with the deck is okay, but I pretty much each moment I was playing the deck, I realized if I was playing somebody else, I would have a much better time. It's just too fast in that specific queue. So it's a bit unfortunate because the effect is pretty strong, but it's too oppressive. Enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment below. What are your thoughts? What changes would you make to these type of deck lists for it to be worth the price lag, or is it just too expensive to start with? Thanks for watching.